This happened a little while back, and I can't stop turning it over in my head. Maybe it's not as big of a deal as I think, or maybe it's exactly as bad as it feels, and I'm just now starting to unpack it. For context, I'm in my 20s and have dealt with depression and ADHD for most of my life. After years of pushing it off, I finally agreed to see a psychiatrist. He was someone my parents had found and recommended. He wasn't exactly cheap. In fact, he didn't take insurance at all, which meant we were paying out of pocket for every session. But I was desperate to feel better, and my parents were willing to help, so I went along with it. Now, I only met this guy 4 or 5 times in person, but those sessions were some of the most vulnerable moments I'd ever had with another human being. I talked to him about things I'd never even said out loud before. Stuff about my self-worth, how easily overwhelmed I get, how broken I sometimes feel. He gave me a diagnosis, explained my ADHD and depression in ways that made sense to me, and even talked to me about past relationships. I remember one session where I opened up about an ex-boyfriend, and he flat out said, "He sounds like a sex addict," which, in the moment, was weirdly validating for me. Anyway, fast forward a few months. I stopped seeing him for various reasons, mostly the cost, but also because I was in a better place mentally and didn't feel like I needed weekly sessions anymore. Life went on. Then came this one night that I wanted to ask you guys about. There was a band playing downtown. A friend and I decided to check it out. It was one of those summer night events where people were drinking, dancing on the outdoor patio, and generally just having a good time. I was tipsy but far from wasted, just enough beers to loosen up and enjoy the music. I was standing near the edge of the crowd with my friend when I spotted someone familiar. "Oh, that's my therapist," I said, half laughing and trying to play it cool. My friend shrugged. "So what? Who cares?" she said just before she ran off to dance closer to the band. Next thing I know, she's dancing with this guy from a nearby group, and I see my old psychiatrist walking over with a few of his buddies. He stops a few feet away from me and squints. "Hey, how do I know you?" he asks, a little slurred but obviously trying to place me. Before I can even respond, he adds, "Wait, are you one of the girls from that party last night?" Now, I have no idea what party he's talking about, but I play along. "Yeah, sure," I say, laughing nervously. My friend comes back over, still dancing with the guy she met, and suddenly the psychiatrist's friend goes, "Dude, they were totally at Keegan's party. That guy's nuts, right? Hey, you guys want to do some blow?" Before either of us can form an answer, he pulls out a bag of Coke, just right there in public, like it's no big deal. My friend, who's much drunker than I am, is excited and down to try. She grabs this guy's hand, and the whole group starts heading towards the restrooms, likely for a little bit more privacy. I tag along because I'm not about to leave her alone in that situation. While we're standing there, my friend's doing a line, and my former therapist turns to me. "You want some?" he asks, holding out the bag casually. I shake my head. "Nah, I'm good. Coke makes me super depressed and anxious. Not really my thing." I said it that way on purpose. I was hoping it would jog his memory, that something would click and he'd realize, "Oh, I used to treat this person." But if it did, he didn't show it. He takes the bag back from my friend, dips a car key in, and takes a big bump right in front of me. Then he leans in slightly and goes, "You know, I'm a psych. You could talk to me about that." Internally, I wanted to scream. The absurdity of it all nearly broke my brain. This man had sat across from me while I told him things I couldn't even tell my own family. He listened to me talk about my fears, my mental state, how substances affect me. He was supposed to be a safe space, a professional. And now here he was, coked out and offering therapy tips between lines. I didn't say a thing. I just stood there in stunned silence. My friend finished her line, and I grabbed her arm, telling her we should probably go. Thankfully, she didn't argue. I walked away from that night feeling gross, confused, angry, but also weirdly embarrassed, even though I didn't do anything wrong. The part that messes me up the most is that this was the first person I ever let in, mentally and emotionally. And now, I'll never be able to think about those sessions without picturing him stumbling around, high, partying with a bunch of young women like he wasn't responsible for a thing in this world. I get it. People are human, even therapists and doctors. They drink, they party, they need a way to cut loose. I'm not saying they have to live like saints, but there's a line, right? There has to be a line. And once you've crossed it, especially with someone you've treated, it feels predatory, or at the very least, wildly unethical. I haven't told my parents. I haven't told any other therapist I've seen since. I guess I'm scared they'll just brush it off or make excuses for him, but deep down, I know what I saw, and I know how it made me feel. So I'm asking the internet because I don't know where else to take this. Was that as messed up as it felt? Or am I just overthinking, like always? Grief has a strange way of sticking around. It doesn't matter how many years pass or how well you've managed to patch your life back together. There are just some wounds that never really heal. Some names and faces, they linger in your head like splinters in your fingers. For me, that name is Chris, and this is the story of how I repaid him for what he did to my little brother. My brother was 2 years younger than me. He was sweet, quiet, kind. The type of kid who would never hurt a soul but somehow became a magnet for cruelty. In high school, he was targeted by this guy named Chris. Chris was the classic high school villain. Loud, arrogant, full of teenage bravado. The kind of guy who thought tearing others down was the best way to make himself look bigger, and no one seemed to get it worse than my brother. It started with small things freshman year, but it escalated quickly. Public humiliation, physical intimidation, tons of rumors. Every day my brother came home just a little more hollow than the day before. I did everything I could to protect him. I confronted Chris because we all went to the same school. I went to teachers. I begged for my parents to get involved, but nothing changed. Chris was one of those kids who could charm his way out of just about anything. And the school? They turned a blind eye to it, as it was just easier to do so. One evening, while I was out at a friend's house, my brother didn't come down from his room for dinner. My dad went up to his room thinking maybe he was just wrapped up in a video game, but he wasn't in his room. They looked all around the house, and when they finally got to the garage, that's where they found him. Rope, note right beneath him. He was only 16, and I still remember the sound of my mom's cries when I walked through the door that night. It almost wasn't human. We were never the same after that. My family pretty much crumbled. Parents divorced a year later. I moved away after graduation, desperate to put that town behind me. But the guilt, that never left me. Neither did the hatred. Chris, of course, denied ever having a part in this. He never apologized, never admitted a single thing, actually. And he moved on with his life like he hadn't left a Grand Canyon-sized crater in ours. Fast forward about 15 years. I'm in my early 30s, working a job I genuinely enjoy at a mid-sized marketing firm. My life's stable at this point. I've got a steady income, a good circle of friends, and even started thinking seriously about maybe settling down. For the first time in forever, I wasn't drowning in grief. And around that time, we got a new transfer into our department, a woman named Lisa. Lisa was sharp, funny, easy to get along with. We clicked right away. We started having lunch together, joking around in between meetings and slowly building up this kind of friendship. It felt good to have that kind of connection again. About 6 months into working together, Lisa started mentioning her husband more and more. She talked about him kind of a lot. How they met, what he did for a job, the funny little quirks that he had. And then one day, she actually gave me his full name. Chris, same last name as that kid in high school. My stomach dropped. It hit me like a hammer to the face, because while I spent a good portion of my life ruminating on this person, I hadn't heard anyone else say his name since high school. Now, after that shock wore off, I waited a few days before looking him up, just to be sure. But yeah, same face, older, a little bit rounder, but unmistakably him. The boy who had made my brother's life hell was now married to my coworker and living some picturesque suburban life. I know that I should have let it go. That's what I told myself. People change and revenge is poison. It wouldn't bring my brother back. I ran through all the therapy speak I'd absorbed over the years, but none of it stuck. I just kept picturing my brother's face, how broken he looked that last week, and how powerless I'd felt to help him. So I did something awful. I made a decision right then and there. I was going to sleep with Lisa. Now, that's not something that I came to easily, but I was invested. The plan started off with small things, compliments that led to more conversation, accidental touches, once innocent inside jokes that now edged a bit more towards flirtation. I knew she was married, and I knew exactly how wrong this all was, but I also knew how to play the game. I didn't push, I let her come to me, and slowly, she started to. About 2 months later, we hooked up for the first time. It was after a late-night work function. Too many drinks, lots of laughter. She invited me to drop her off, and one thing, like they say, led to another. I could see the guilt in her eyes the next morning at work, but also something else. It's actually kind of hard to find the word for it, but the closest that I can come is hunger. Later that week, she texted me while I was taking a rare lunch break alone. It said, "I can't stop thinking about it. Do you think we can talk?" I don't remember exactly what I replied with, but it was something like, "Sure, of course we can talk." We didn't talk. We f***ed. And we kept doing it. For 10 months now, Lisa and I have been sleeping together. Hotel rooms, her place when Chris is out of town, once even in the office after hours. It's become routine, but I can't lie and say that it's not exciting. Every time we meet to hook up, I feel two things: disgust at myself and a deep, primal satisfaction. In all of our time together, I've never told her who I really was, that I knew her husband from years ago and that he was the reason my brother was buried 6 feet under at the age of 16. To her, I'm just a coworker that she's emotionally and physically tangled up with. To me, she's justice in a tight blouse. I don't know what I expected to feel by now. Some sense of closure or relief? Not really. Vengeance fulfilled? Not exactly. Truth is, I feel like shit. I see the guilt eating her up more and more each day, too. She started tearing up after sex once. She said she didn't know why she was doing this. She said that she loved Chris, and that being dishonest to a good man was killing her inside. Okay, maybe people change, maybe they don't. But the lasting impression that I've had of this guy is that he's not a good man. But that's neither here nor there, because I don't really care. He never had to answer for what I know he did. I lost my brother, and Chris got to move on. He got to forget and build a life on top of a grave that he helped to dig. Lisa doesn't know it, but I'm in the process of pulling away. I'm gonna end things with her soon. She deserves the truth, but I don't think I'll ever give it to her. If I'm being real, this was never about her anyway. She was just a means to an end, and while I know how fucked up that sounds, I'm being honest. Do I regret what I did? Yeah, in pieces. But if I had to choose between doing it again or letting Chris live the rest of his life untouched by the pain that he caused, I'd still do it. He took something from me that I'll never get back. And for 10 months, I took something from him. It's not justice. It never will be. But it's something. It's strange how quickly the ordinary can turn into something that you'll never forget. One day, you're texting the person you love about what to eat for dinner or what show you want to binge next. And the next moment, You're standing in front of a sterile metal table, trying to recognize what's left of her. I never thought I'd be that person. I never imagined that I'd get that call, but now I can't imagine anything else. My girlfriend and I had been together for 3 years. Not married, not living together, but that doesn't matter. Our lives were tied together in just about every way that counts. She'd stay at my place 2 or 3 nights a week, sometimes more if our schedules lined up. Other times I'd crash at hers, especially on the weekends. We had our own routine, inside jokes that only we understood. It felt like, even though we hadn't said it out loud yet, we both knew that we were heading toward forever. Marriage, kids, a shared mailbox. All of it felt inevitable, in the best kind of way. She was warm, wickedly smart, and had this way of making people feel like they were the only ones in the room when she talked to them. And if others didn't feel that way about her, I certainly did. She wasn't flashy about it. She didn't demand attention. She just drew it. This girl was literally the light of my life. Last week started out like any other. She had class both in the morning and the evening. I was working an early shift. We texted back and forth during breaks, mostly memes, little updates about the day, even a picture I shared of my lunch. Well, around 6:30 p.m., she sent me a photo of a meal she had made before heading out to her night class. She was really proud of it, saying that she was finally getting it to look restaurant-worthy. I replied, teasing her about opening a food truck. She didn't respond. Not immediately, which wasn't a big deal. But as the hours ticked on that night, I texted again. Got nothing. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. At first, I just thought maybe her phone had died, or it was on silent. But by the time I got into bed that night, and I realized she still hadn't read my messages, I felt my gut twist into knots. It's that feeling you get when you know something's wrong. Not in a paranoid sort of way, but in a way that you just can't ignore. I barely slept that night. I kept checking my phone, pulling down on the chat thread, hoping for those 3 little dots to pop up. They didn't. I woke up the next morning and my last few messages still hadn't been read. What's worse though, when I sent another, it instantly turned green. Those of you out there that have iPhones know what I'm talking about. iMessage had dropped off. That morning, before heading into my job, I drove to her apartment. The first thing I noticed was that her car wasn't there. There were no lights on inside. The door was locked, blinds were shut, everything looked normal. But I think even then, deep down, I knew that it wasn't. I knocked on the door before I used my spare key. Once I was inside, I called her name, but there was no answer. I didn't spend too much time in the apartment. Just gave a quick walkthrough, saw that nothing was out of place, and as quick as I came, I was on my way. I tried to go through my day thinking maybe I was just being dramatic. Maybe she just needed a little space. But everything felt wrong. I knew that her mom lived out of state. They didn't necessarily have the best of relationships, but I called her anyway just to see if maybe they'd spoken. They hadn't, and that's when my panic fully set in. I called the police to file a missing persons report. Her mom did the same with her local department. The officers were polite, measured with everything they said to us. They asked what I assume are the usual questions. Does she have a habit of disappearing? Was there anything of note going on in her life? Did she show any signs of distress? I told them the truth. We were solid, no drama, no reason for her to vanish. The next few days were a blur. No messages, no updates. I kept checking her social media, hoping for a story to pop up. Something, but there was nothing. I didn't eat. I barely drank water. My phone was either in my hand or right next to me. I didn't want to miss a call. I was afraid to sleep just in case something came through. And that's when the call came. It was a couple of days after we filed the initial report. It was in the afternoon. When I answered the phone, there was a detective on the other end of the line. Calm voice, straight to the point. A body had been discovered by hikers in a wooded area about 20 miles out of town. Female, no ID. They were hoping I could come down to the coroner's office, to see if I could help with identification. I honestly don't know how I made the drive. My hands were numb on the steering wheel. My heart was pounding a mile a minute, but my chest felt hollow. I tried to prepare myself for anything, but you can't really prepare for something like that. Once I arrived, they brought me into a small room. Not the metal slab horror movie scene that people picture. More of a holding area, with a window separating me from what I didn't want to see. A technician gently pulled the sheet back, and there she was, or at least what was left of her. I knew it was her immediately, even though I wish I didn't. Her hair, the shape of her jaw, even under all the visible bruising. She'd been hurt badly. Her face was swollen, discolored, obviously marked by violence. The detective later told me that she'd been struck multiple times in the head with something heavy. Her clothes were torn, partially removed. They didn't say more, and I didn't ask. They gave me a few minutes to myself, and all I could do was stand there, frozen. I couldn't speak. I couldn't cry. I just stared at her and kept thinking, she was alive a few days ago. She was texting me dinner photos and laughing at dumb videos that I sent. And now she's gone. Like this. Beaten, dumped, left like trash. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab someone and demand answers, but all I could do was whisper, "I'm sorry," over and over, until the words just didn't sound real anymore. Later that day, I met with detectives again. They confirmed that it was being investigated as a homicide. They didn't sugarcoat it either. Someone had done this to her deliberately. Someone made a choice, and now they were going to try to find out who. Now, I'm not going to pretend that that gave me any peace. It didn't. It still doesn't. There is no peace in this. There's just a whole lot of grief. There's guilt too, more than I can even explain. Guilt for not calling sooner, for not being there, for not somehow preventing the nightmare that I didn't know was coming. Since then, every day has been a version of survival. People keep telling me to eat, to sleep, to take care of myself. I just nod. I try, but everything tastes like ash. Time moves weirdly. Some hours drag on. Others disappear in the blink of an eye. I replay her last day over and over in my head. I wonder where she went when she got out of class, how she ended up there, if she was afraid. And that last one absolutely kills me. I imagine her alone, facing someone who meant to do her harm. The fear in her eyes, the panic, and it breaks me. No one should die like that. No one. The investigation is still ongoing, and I can't share much else because I don't want to jeopardize anything. But they're working on it. They say they're close, but I don't know what that means anymore. I came to Reddit because I needed to say this out loud, or write it at least. Grief can be isolating, even when you're surrounded by people. And this kind of grief, it's hard to explain. It's not just loss. It's horror. It's helplessness. It's 1,000 emotions tangled together until you can't tell one from the other. She was the best part of my life, and she was taken from this world in the cruelest way. And now I live with that knowledge, with that image of her face behind the glass, for likely the rest of my life. When they catch the person who did this, I'll be there every day of their trial. I'll sit in the front row. I'll look them in the eye so they know that she mattered. She was loved. And while they may have caught her alone that night, she was never alone in this life. What it boils down to for me is that she deserved so much more than what this world gave her. And I'll never stop wishing that I could have done something to change that.